Hey guys, how's it going? So today's video is just a little bit of a recap of a live stream that we did. And it's basically, we're going to try and do the cog system that I showed you guys. I'm going to try and do it on this massive 85 by 85 plot farm. So that's 7,225-ish fields. But first of all, I've got to get rid of this monorail. I am going to be using mods and I am going to be using commands, which is what helps me get rid of this monorail system. All I've got to do is knock it down. Then I can just look at it and type in the chat command. I just type in \delete, and thanks to Font and his wonderful commands, it disappears completely. Next up, we're looking at the buggy that we're going to use, and what we've got here are the standard larger wheels that you get in Scrap Mechanic, and I want to compare them against some 9 block wide wheels that are in the Font mod. And what I wanted to do was show how far these will go on one rotation. So it's not a race, we're not talking about speed, we're talking about distance here. So we just double check that the bearings are actually going the right way. And this is just one rotation, one 360-degree rotation. And I wanted to show that this is why I was going to use the 9-time wheels, because on one 360-degree rotation, we actually get so much further. So this is going to help us kind of get that distance down the line, because obviously this is 256 blocks long from corner to corner, this field. So the more blocks that I can get, the better it'll be. So as you see, it's like 12 blocks difference by that. So then I just wanted to check the range, so I just jump into the controller, whack this all the way up, so all 10 rows go all the way up to 360, and we turn it on, and we just see where it goes. Now we're hoping to get it past the farm at the end that it's going to, just because we didn't start level with the farm. So it looks good actually, it goes pretty well past it, which gives me some hope that we've got a lot of room to go and some room to spare. So this is perfect for what we're looking for. This will give us lots of drive the whole entire length of the farm on the controller, so we've got a little bit of control over it. Totally perfect. Next up, we just got to build the craft. If you guys remember how I went about the cog system, I basically started with our harvester first, so I'm going to do it 5 vacuum pumps wide. This will be enable us to kind of water at 17 times, if that makes sense. So we go up, across, down, across, up, across, down, across. It might make a little bit more sense when I show you guys. So starting with the vacuum pumps, and we're going to put T pieces on, and then I'm going to put a block in between the next row. And the reason being, I've seemed to have run into a little bit of issues sometimes with the Font mod vacuum pumps, in that if I have things too close and they touch, sometimes certain pumps won't work. So what I'm doing here is I'm just building up nice layers. What I've got is a harvesting set at each end. So it will basically be harvest, water, plant, harvest. And the reason being, whichever position this is at, whether it's at the starting point or the finishing point, it'll need to harvest the crops first before it does anything else. If I just have one harvester one way, it means it's going to try and double plant. So it's literally 4 vacuum pump sort of wide by 5 across, and this will cover a 5 plot, which means I've got to do 17 passes, which is fine. And then, if you guys remember, using the mod, we got these fantastic little pumps that we can put in. So this will transfer all the veggies and all the seeds, as well as bring the water in. So it'll work to harvest, and it'll work to water and everything as well. So it'll keep everything nice and tight. I did look at doing this in vanilla. I won't lie, I did look at doing this in vanilla. To water, we would need 12 large chests. To harvest, because you could never guarantee the numbers of a harvest, because as you guys might know, when you harvest, you'll get 1 produce, and then you'll get 1, 2, or 3 seeds. So you have to take into account your biggest number, which ultimately means you're going to get 3 seeds and 1 product. You're going to get 4 things from each one field. So using that number, it would mean that you'd have to have 48 large chests to make sure you had enough room for harvesting, which is just, it's not impossible, but it's very impractical. So I decided to use the mod for this, just to see if I could actually get the system up and running. And once we're happy in this situation, then all we've got to do is just throw the wheels on. So luckily the wheels fit nicely, and like I say, we're going to use those huge, massive, sort of size 9 wheels, if you like, because they give us a little bit more distance from the controller rotation. And that was hopefully pretty much perfectly what we wanted. So then all you got to do is eye up your sides, and then this is basically just kind of setting out a little bit of a layout for what our platform will be that this thing will run on. We'll keep it nice and sleek. So we've got our lamps. So then we just drop this down, and then we can just run it out. So what I'm building here is like the thing. I've got a wooden block underneath each wheel, and the wooden block is going to be like the road that it runs on. And then I've got a little bit of a block at the sides, there's a little bit of wall. Now, unluckily, it kind of stuck itself to itself, so I did have to take these off. But it wasn't too much of an issue. Once we got those off, we could shift the harvesting thing out of the way, pick up this, and line this up sort of with the back wall, because obviously we need this thing to be out of the way of the fields when it's not in position. So this is exactly where I want it to be. Now all we got to do is just run the entire length of the farm that we want to go. So we'll just grab these blocks and we'll run it all the way up. And I'll not keep you guys on this, I'll just drop it out and you'll see what I mean. So now we're all the way up here. The wheels are going to be running across the wood. So now I need to give it a little bit of an edge just to stop the wheels from wobbling over and going over. So this is what this edge is all about. It's just to kind of squeeze the wheels in and hold them in position exactly where we need them to be. While we're down here as well, we'll put a bit of a block on the front just to stop it from going over the end when it gets right down here. So that will stop it from going that way. And like I say again, these edges will stop it coming out the side. Perfect. Next up, we're going to work on the cog system. So this is going to be what actually moves this whole piece down the length of the farm. Oh, this is pretty easy to do actually. We're just going to put a 90 in, then we're going to put a pipe piece and a straight pipe piece. Then we're going to put a bearing. Then we're going to put this 5-way pipe piece that's going to rotate, but it's also going to mean that we can connect bigger pipe pieces into it, so it's like a cog system. So it's like this. So just put another one here, and then we just put these pipes on this bit, and this is what's going to actually move this. So we'll put 2 up here like you see here, and we'll go down the bottom end, and then we'll put 2 down there. Then we'll grab a controller and we'll just hook it up to the controller, and yeah, then we've got to make the teeth system that this actually sits in, which is quite fun. So now, after taking some careful measurements from our harvester to work out the distance between where the wheel will sit and where the vacuum pump needs to sit, we start to eye ourselves up to work out where we wanted to put in the next part, which is our frame that this system is actually going to run on. So we do a little bit of measuring up here, and I'm pretty happy with where we end up. So it's just a case of getting the height that we wanted and getting a distance away from the farm that we wanted in order for the first edge of this thing to be. After a few careful adjustments, we managed to get this where we wanted it to be, which means I then just have to put these teeth on it. So this is like the teeth system to the cog and teeth system. Decided I was going to do it in wood. When I took that metal block away, it kind of nudged this one around, which kind of made this one impossible to get in a bit. But it didn't matter, we just thought we'll come back to that, we'll sort the rest out. And I just thought this is going to be a very, very tedious thing. If I've got to do this, I've got to run this line in, putting all these little blocks in, it's going to take me absolutely ages. Then I had a brainwave. So I came down the other end to do the same thing at the other end. And I knew at this point it was going to be very tedious, but I wanted to finish off the little bit that I had made, and I thought I can use the import-export command. I just build a length on the left, and then just literally import it and export it, so that I could run a length out and not have to keep building it. I only had to build one and import and export it. So that's all I did, is I ran a length out as long as I needed to be. I double-checked to see how I finished. I finished with a tooth, so that meant that the starting edge had to have no wooden block, but the finishing edge had to have a wooden block. That way this would just piece together so nicely. So I missed the first one, and then I just literally blocked this all the way to the end, and then finished with a long piece with a tooth on it, and I had a unit that I could just import and wouldn't have to keep remaking. All I had to do is just type import, and then import the name. Doing it this way might have been a little bit of a cheat, but it also made things a little bit quicker because I could use the same piece for the top and bottom edge, so I wouldn't have to worry about constantly building and doing all those individual blocks all the way along the line. Don't forget, this is 256 blocks long. It's a lot of blocks to do every other block. So this way made it so much quicker, so much easier, and actually made the whole build a little bit quicker to do. The import-export command is a command that anybody can do if you have the dev commands set up, and to do that you have to go and tweak your game files a little bit, but it isn't part of any mod or anything. It is a base command that is there for everybody, and it just helps so much. It's basically a way that you can save blueprints in survival. Now we're on to the brains of it all, and we're basically going to use a controller. I also put down this smart controller. Don't worry about that, we'll get onto that a bit later. First off, I just wanted to make sure everything was working, so I just link everything up to the controller and set it go in the right direction, because obviously we need to move down the farm where there's space for it to move to. So make sure that they're going to be rotating in the right direction, and then we're just going to link up the other two down the bottom, and then we'll have a look in the controller and see if we can't get this thing to actually move, and hopefully it'll work. To make this a real world test, because we need to make sure that it can carry the weight, we get the harvester, chuck the harvester on top, and then we're sort of happy. When this is in some sort of position, I'm happy that it's sitting right where it needs to sit. And what we're going to do is we're going to trot on down back to the controller, and we're going to ask the controller to spin it up, and we'll get some movement out of this thing. Hopefully it won't go mental, it'll stay exactly straight and square as it needs to, won't twist or warp. The only way to find out is literally to try it. So we're just going to run it straight off a standard switch, so it's either on or it's off. We're just going to go in, I'm just going to run everything up just once, maybe twice, just to see where we get to, get some movement out of this thing. 3 times actually will give us a little bit more wriggle room. So as you can see, it moves pretty sweet. It moves pretty square, which is exactly what we want it to do. This goes the entire length of the farm. Both front, it's right down the bottom there, that's moving, and this edge is both moving, and it's absolutely perfect. Now if we turn it off, it should go back all the way to the end where it started. I just run down here just to have a look at it, make sure everything's all well and smooth, not bouncing around everywhere, not going too crazy. And actually we're all looking good, which is kind of impressive, to be fair. And then that just sits in its position back where it was. Now I noticed that we've lined it up extremely badly. This block needs to be to the left of that vacuum pump, whereas it's really not. So I do have to spend some time messing around trying to tweak this into the right place, but it's not too bad. We'll get there in the end, and we'll get it started where we need it to start. So all I did is went into the controller, and you know the first set of numbers is I just notched them over 90 degrees. It just stepped it out one block, which is perfect for us. Now I'm just hooking up these harvesting vacuum pumps directly to a switch. I need to make sure that this thing is at the right height to harvest. So they're all on, and they're all going to be sucking up. Now we'll just jump up here, we'll throw our controller down and connect up all these wheels to get us going in the direction that we need to go. And then once we've connected up the second one, we'll just go into the controller and we'll just run it. We're not going to run this all the way up, it's just a test. So we'll just nudge it up just a couple, just to get us enough of a drive across the fields to hopefully let us see they're in the right way. So we'll just spin this up a couple of times, maybe 3 again, see where this gets us. So we're going to punch the switch, and there's a couple of crops below us that it should be harvesting, and it's not. So we'll turn it off, we'll wind it back, and we'll have to have a look at seeing how we can lower this thing. While I'm perusing the undercarriage of this device, I completely nearly forgot I don't actually need all these vacuum pumps for harvesting. Because it's 5 plots wide, I can do it with 2 vacuum pumps. The mod stops the soil duplication glitch, but just having 2 will be able to harvest a 6 wide because of the whole 3x3 rule of a vacuum pump. So I can take some of these off and get some weight back. I completely forgot about that. Here's our new lowered device. What we're doing is we basically place the wheels higher up. So if you see, they're now higher above the vacuum pumps than they were before. This drops the whole thing down a little bit. We turn it on, and it does seem to harvest, but it is also rocking and bouncing around a little bit crazy because of good old scrap mechanic physics, which is not ideal for us. But now the controller has also turned off, you see the machine is sort of bouncing and sliding backwards. The only thing I can think of is it's either because it's being squished inwards and it's causing it to have some collision calculation headaches, or it's just reading the blocks of wood are just too long for it. It doesn't like big long lines. So what I decided to do was kind of take out every other block, and as soon as I took the first one out, it seemed to stop it bouncing around. Maybe it's a fix, maybe it was just pure coincidence, but I'm not entirely sure. Just got to make sure I don't take out too many blocks that line up with the farm, and then hopefully we're good. Then we've got to look at a way that we can actually fire this thing using sensors. So my decision was, if I can stick a block out, I can put a sensor on the machine itself and have the sensor triggered by a block, and that'd fire the vacuum pump, or activate the vacuum pump even. This will hopefully let me know if things are going to work. So I've just got to go down and make sure that it lines up with the plot, and then just run a block down the entire length of the farm. When we're happy with that, jump back on, double check everything, turn it on again, and then basically we just watch it go. The sensor seems to be triggering. I like my sound just to be doubly sure, and it is triggering potentially quite quick, but you know, we might get away with it. Just have to have a look, see what happens. It cruises pretty well, and it seems to reach with the vacuum pump everything that we need to reach. It's just having a little bit of a wobble again now, which is never good, but for the most part it seems to be working. However, it did just miss them two, and I don't really know why. I think it might have bounced itself out of a position to pick it up. So we'll just have to sort of have a double check. We'll spin it back, see if it grabs them on the way back, which it does. So it's potentially high enough, so that's not an issue. But it might be a little bit too fast as well. So what I've done is a similar thing. I've hooked up the water in a similar way. So again, the water is reading the same sticky outy block, and as you can see with the water, it's too fast. It's hitting every other one. Now the only issue that we've got with this is the controller is on the slowest speed, so the only way to make this slower is to use smaller wheels. So I tried size 7 wheels, and they were too big, and I think this is size 5 wheels. So we'll give this a go and see how this ends up. So exactly the same old thing. I'm just going to test it in, smash the button. Now the problem with the wheels being this size is they're no longer going to go all the way down to the end of the farm. So I won't be able to control this off the controller rotation. The idea was if I could turn the controller on, obviously it'd go all the way to the bottom, and when I turn it off it'd come back. With the wheels being smaller, it won't make that full distance. So I'm going to have to try and find another way that we can do this. And that's where things are going to get kind of stressful and frustrating, but we'll see how this gets on. So I spin this all the way up on these little wheels first, just to see how far it's going to get us, in the hope that it's going to get us all the way to the end of the farm. If you don't try, you never know. So we turn this on and we'll let it cruise down here, and as you can hear, the water's firing a lot slower, which is hopeful for us. It's not kind of pulsing all the way down, so it is firing nice and steady at a nice steady rhythm. But how far are we going to get? I'm not entirely sure. Just sitting up here, you see it starts to kind of go a little bit crazy, there's a little bit of bobbles and bounces and stuff. And you can see it's bouncing and rocking around everywhere, and it was hitting most of the plots, which is good. Potentially we'll just run out of water, so that's not too big of a deal. But it was getting all the way across, and unfortunately it stops. I had to add another vacuum pump onto the end just so that we made sure that we got underneath, and I wanted to double check that we weren't duplicating soil. We weren't, so this was great. But also, as you notice, sometimes the vacuum pumps look a little bit sketchy. Like this little guy on the end here, he doesn't have his arrow on it, and this is one of the issues I run into using this mod, is sometimes the vacuum pumps don't display what they should be displaying, and then sometimes they also don't seem to work how you would want them to work, so it can be a little bit temperamental at times. So now we've got to look at using logic NUD to make this thing move forwards on loop on the controller. So I'm going to use a memory bit, the good old NOR memory bit, so that we can activate this and deactivate this, which will hopefully work. But the only one way to do it is to try it. So for trial purposes, we'll just set up the memory bit. And then I'm going to need or want to run this off something. So for now, I'm just going to run it off of push buttons just to see if it will work and where we'll get to. We'll need one to turn us on. And then we're cruising, and it will go through this lot on the controller, which we don't want. So we'll try and turn this off, and yeah, probably not the best way to do it. So the easiest thing to do is put a stop button down, and set to stop. But because currently it is not set on loop, it's going to run backwards through the sequence. So if I try and change this, we're going to screw it up. Easy fix, delete the controller, add a new one, link the new one up to the bearings. It removes all the information on the inside. Now we're also going to be using this. This is one of those fantastic controllers that I was telling you about. And what this does is it allows two inputs, but it acts like a seat. So what that means is if I have this input to connect to the controller and we turn it on, it will run it forwards. And then if I set up another memory bit this side, so again we'll do another NOR, NOR and OR memory bit, and we'll run this off the same buttons. So what we're trying to say is we want, so we'll just nick this one for emergency stop for now, just to chill it out. And then if we connect this up to this special controller here, it tells us that we've got to paint it basically. So we're going to paint it, we'll paint it black actually. So it's the second input, so it will now see that right hand side memory bit as a reverse and the left hand side memory bit as a forward. So currently everything's stopped, so we push the forwards, and it helps if you actually put some information into the controller. So we'll just check this and we'll just put it up to 90 to see how we get on with this first. Don't want to go zooming away because this is going to be on loop, so we want it to be controllable. And as you can see, 90 is super slow. So we'll go back in and we'll just run this thing all the way up to 360. Still set on loop, still on its slow setting, and we'll see how we get on. So with that actually working how we want it to do, what I'm looking to do now is get a sensor on. And if we can use this sensor to either stop it all or reverse the direction, I'm kind of undecided yet, that'll help us out. And what I'm hoping to do is just use a normal sensor to plug onto this machine to see when it's at the end. So what I'll do is I'll try and activate the reverse memory bit. Change of plan, we're going to use the sensor to activate the stop memory bit. That way we don't have to worry about it, because obviously we want this to get to the end first and then we want it to stop, then we want the whole platform to move across one, and then we want it to reverse. So we'll see what happens. Also it helps if you stop the correct memory bit. So that works, that does what we want it to do. Now all we've got to do is work out how much input we need on this controller to make it rotate across. So what we need to try and do is get those right hand side cogs to land, hopefully, inside the two black bricks that we've just sprayed, and that will be in the right place. And running it with what the controller currently has in it is too big, so what we're going to have to do is reverse this, get it back to where it belongs, and kind of tweak the controller and hope for the best. Then I've got to think of a way of how to automate this movement once the little trolley has come up. So once that trolley's come up and it sits here, we then got to work out how to move the whole thing to the left one square and then send the trolley back. So in order to get this controller to run where we want it to be, I've put it to 2 full rotations and a quarter, and I hope that this is potentially going to be in the right place and it'll sit where it needs to sit. The only way to try this is to literally turn it on, let it run into position, and then when it is in its position that we want it to be in, that quarter turns slow, isn't it? But when it's there, hopefully that should be in the right place. The only way to find that out is if we hop up and hop on board and turn it on and send it back. So once we're on, we're going to hook up the emergency stop button again, and this will help us stop it instead of it going absolutely AWOL, out of control and whatnot. And then we need to put in one more button to actually activate this memory bit, which will do the reverse drive. Because of that special controller, it's the second input. So turn this on, it has a little bit of a thinking time, but then it does start moving. And this and the watering will let me see if we're lining up where we need to line up. And we're hoping to run right next to that wet line that we've already made from the previous run. And as you see, it's a little bit temperamental. It's actually right on the join. So we're getting some but not getting others. Likewise, we're also missing some of the harvesting. So that's an easy fix in my eyes. We're literally 1 block away. So we'll just take this quarter turn out, and it'll bring the whole thing across that 1 block again. And it should then put us on top of where we need to be. Double check it. Have a look at the old watering. See where we missed it all here, and then we're hitting it now every time here, and that's working. I do notice that we don't seem to be harvesting though, which isn't a good thing. But it turns out you're not going to harvest if your storage is full. So we empty the storage and we just pop up, turn the whole rig off, boop, and then we'll send it back the other way. Now we've emptied that, so we should be able to harvest. We should get everything. We're still not quite getting the ones right on the edges. We don't seem to be getting the ones that are right underneath it either. Not with the front harvesting set anyway. Which is disappointing and potentially means we are too high. Okay, so we've loaded us down quite a bit actually, so it should be able to reach everything now. It seems a little bit janky when it's firing its water. Maybe that's what's causing it to kind of bobble around everywhere. But for the most part, it is hitting what we want it to hit, which is obviously is a good thing. We are harvesting what we want to harvest for the most part. We seem to be watering every row, which is awesome. That's exactly what we wanted as well. So we should be good. Also, randomly, I don't know if you noticed, sometimes when it fires water, it seems to make them grow. Don't ask me what that's all about. But yeah, the extra water splash seems to spur it into growing, which is very peculiar. I also decided for ease I was going to use a colour sensor on every single row to detect, and then I only literally need to put one block in the right place. On this frame moves, so the black dot will also kind of move down the farm with it, so we don't have to worry about needing to do lots of little black dots the entire row of the farm. So this should be helpful for us, hopefully. Now with everything mostly set up, so we've got both harvesting set up and we've got the water set up, we're going to run one final test run. So what should happen here is this front set will harvest, so that'll pick up anything that needs harvesting. The water will water, and if it grows anything, the back harvesters should also pick it up. But as you noticed, it seems to want to climb out. It's being a bit janky. Maybe this is the friction of the side wheels upon the sidewall. Maybe it's the way that the vacuum pumps are going to pump it a bit. Maybe I'll be better off adding some suspension here. I don't really know. But by this point, I was getting a little bit frustrated. So I don't entirely know what to do about this. But I just want to get it down, get it in somewhere that we can have this whole thing automated. And then we'll have a look, see where we get to next. So now I need to work out how I can make this automated. And my first thought was, what about if we can run it on a timer? And the way that we're going to have to do that is a memory bit that activates a timer that will activate the controller, so the controller will move, but then when the timer's run out, the controller will shut off. And what we need to do for that is work out how many clicks the timer needs to be active for in order for the controller to do exactly 2 rotations. So I just run up a little rig here just as a little sort of helpful demo to myself, so that I don't have to interfere with the main thing over there. Run a little test piece, and hopefully this will help us work out what we need to do. So I build a replica. Basically I just throw up a bearing, I throw up a gear, and I work out with the gear how far I need it to rotate. I need it to rotate twice. Work out how long it takes to do that. And then when that's in place, I've got my time. Haven't had to worry about the rig at the top. We've got it exactly where we want it. So when we press the button, we see where it needs to go. 1 second was way too fast. You can see that clear as day. So then it's just a case of working it out. So I just go here, do 10 seconds. Actually, this looks pretty good. But I've completely and utterly lost where I am. So the only way to work this one out is if we paint it. The good news is it won't go backwards when the timer's cooling down the circuit. So the easiest way to work this one out is if I chuck some paint on the end and paint up the tip, then we can see how many revolutions this does. And we need this to go around twice. So I think that's pretty good. And as you can see by pure luck, 400 ticks or 10 seconds is the perfect amount. And this is absolutely fantastic, because what this means is I can activate this memory bit using a sensor so that it'll move it on a piece every time the little cart is where it needs to be. And I can do this at both ends. I can run one sensor from this top end and one sensor from the bottom end. When the sensor sees the cart, it'll be able to move the whole unit across to the next set. It's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Haven't quite worked out how we're going to go back the other way and bring it back into its normal position, but so far so good. I guess the other way we'll do it is literally just run it off of potentially a second memory bit, or just have a second input so that it will bounce back the other way, but we'll just have to have a look, see how we get on. But I was amazed that I managed to find that so quick. So now hopefully a little demo piece. So it's the exact same thing we just tried on its standing own. And we need it to go so that the black dot is on the left. So ignore that furthest black dot. It needs to go in between the black and the normal wood. Right there. That is perfect. That is exactly where we want it. Genuinely can't believe it works. But I'm happy that it does. So now it's just a case of working out how to run this off of a sensor so that it will kind of move across. But I'm amazed it works. Manually, we've got it working. We've got it doing what we want it to do. Absolutely stoked. Okay, so the thing with me and logic is I'm not quite big brain enough to know how to work this exactly, so I'm going to be really fumbly with this. I'm going to do another memory bit, and this memory bit is for the sensor because obviously I want the sensor to detect when the car is in place so that it moves the whole rig across, but then the sensor's still going to be there potentially detecting the rig, but I don't want it to, because otherwise it will keep moving across. Does that make sense? So what I think is I set up a memory bit, and the idea is I also have a reverse input. So the thought process is when the sensor is first activated, it triggers the whole timer system that moves us across one, but because of that reverse input gate, it will notice that the sensor is still activated and therefore kind of shut itself off, if that makes any sense. So in theory it won't keep us moving to the side, so it should only trip the controller system once, so we should only move one block across, then it should cut itself out, and then the cart should go away, which should kind of reset the sensor once again, so the next time it comes back it should be able to move across again once more. That's the thought process behind it. Don't know if it's something that I'm capable of, don't know if there's an easier way to do it than what this is. I would imagine that there is. The only way I can do this is to throw what I think and try it. So fingers crossed on this one, we'll see what happens. We're looking at the top right corner to see the memory bit. It flicks on and then it flicks off, and also luckily for us, when the actual harvesting machine stops, it also rolls back a little bit as well, so it actually backs away from that sensor so it doesn't keep it activated, which is just the most perfect situation for us, because obviously it won't keep triggering it. We don't have to worry about all those mental memory bits. It's doing exactly what I want it to do. Now all that's left really is to hop up top and see if we can rig up a timer to the memory bit that will send us in the opposite direction, and we've pretty much got it won. So ultimately all I want to do is run this up, and I'll give it longer. So if I give it like 15 seconds, because we have 10 seconds to move the cart across, and then an extra 5 seconds wiggle room. And what we're saying is we want this sensor that will stop at the end to stop us moving forwards. Then I want a 15-second countdown, and then I want it to activate so it moves us back. So we'll give us a nudge forwards, trips all the sensors, we start moving across, which is exactly what we want to do. The countdown timer is counting down to move us backwards. We've stopped moving sideways, we've got a good 5 seconds leeway here. This should activate all of this, and then a little thought process goes on in that smart controller, and away we go. I'm actually so happy. Like, you have no idea how stoked I am that this actually works. I'm kind of amazed. It was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, and a lot of thought went into it, but genuinely I am so happy that it actually seems to work as well. Sure, it's a little bit bumpy, it's a little bit rocky and whatever, but honestly, that is probably the best thing that I've ever made in Scrap Mechanic, and it's maybe simple, but it was so effective. So I might work on the logic for this, and intriguingly wonder why it missed a slot, but I'll worry about that later. I'll work on the logic on this, see if I can get it bouncing backwards and forwards, but genuinely, I'm so happy that I've managed to make it work how I want it to work. Guys, smash that like button if you enjoyed it, please, that'd be absolutely fantastic. And if you did enjoy it, thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time in the next video. Don't know when it'll be, don't know what it'll be. But you guys have been awesome. You take it easy and you have a good day. Take it easy, guys. Bye for now. Bye, everybody.